And over to Mr. Patel.
All right. Thanks, Chris. So Chris kind of went over the benefits of an ODA appliance, et cetera, just from a hardware capabilities and whatnot. So let's talk about what are the key advantages. Why do customers actually want to buy an ODA? Um, Besides just technical capabilities and those features that Chris described earlier, one of the main reasons customers are buying the ODA from our experience is twofold. One is simplify the administration to build out a new infrastructure. So, they don't want to go through the traditional model, buying the servers and the storage and the switches and all that, those different elements, and having to, put that kit together. And then the second main reason that customers are looking at ODAs are to, as they're looking at consolidating their various different databases and whatnot, they're mindful of their Oracle licensing. And the ODA platform is a great platform for allowing customers to easily manage, maintain, and contain their Oracle licenses. One of the ways they do that is leveraging what Oracle calls pay-as-you-go model as it relates to the database licensing on the ODA appliance. So specifically for the pay-as-you-go model is really applicable to your Oracle Enterprise Edition. The standard editions, we'll get to those in a minute, why it's really not a pay-as-you-go model because of the sockets and whatnot. We'll discuss that in a bit. But for the Oracle Enterprise Edition, when you purchase an ODA X6 platform to your configuration, you can start off with as many minimum as of 2 processor cores on the platform and license just that much. As your business requirements grow, you can modify the number of cores that are allocated for your databases and whatnot, and simply change the configuration. Obviously procure the additional licenses from Oracle, but you don't have to go and move your database infrastructure from this hardware to a brand new hardware. So no hardware upgrades are required just because you need additional CPU capacity. All right, it's the same box, same everything. All we're doing is just changing a config element within the platform to allow you to take advantage of more of the cores. So that when these boxes ship, they're shipping with all the cores and hardware, CPUs, etc., in the box. What you license on that box is managed through the configurations that you deploy on the box. So you can license the database software for just the cores you need, and there's 2 deployment models, which we'll discuss shortly. There's the bare metal deployment model and the virtualized platform configuration. So I think that's one of the key elements or the key decision criteria when you're building out a new ODA appliance is, am I going to do a bare metal deployment or a virtualized deployment? More on that in a little bit. But once you've determined that, you can enable and license just the number of cores that you want, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, etc., depending on how you want to use your ODA box. For the X6-2HA, naturally that's a high availability model of the ODA platform. It essentially has 2 servers that are kind of slapped together, if you will. Right, you get node 1 and 2, and both servers must have the same number of cores enabled. But it is possible to license software for only one of the servers or both servers, depending on how your high availability solution looks like, depending on how you architect it. And specifically with the newer versions of the software with new OKCLI updates and whatnot, there's better ways to update the CPU core and things like that, but you have to be on ODA release 12.1.2.8.1 to be able to leverage those new commands. So this is the latest and greatest software releases that we were talking about that allows you to better manage your database licensing on an ODA appliance. So as I talked about earlier, there's 2 main deployment options, and I think before anybody deploys a brand new ODA, I think this is the key one that you want to make sure you determine which path you want to go down, because once it's configured, to go back and rechange it to the other one is challenging, if you will, because it's a lot of rework and moving a lot of databases and stuff around to go from one model to the other. So the 2 main deployment options are bare metal or virtualized. So bare metal is mainly just for running Oracle databases. If you're buying these appliances and these hardware infrastructure kits for databases only, then bare metal might be a great way for you to go to do just database consolidation, right? After all, it is an Oracle database appliance. But once you go down the bare metal route, you can't easily change it to a virtualized deployment model, right? So, so this is a key decision element. You always, and then once you choose the bare metal deployment option, you can assign the number of cores that the database appliance will use, and it has to be in multiples of 2 with a minimum of 2 cores. And all this stuff is also described in the ODA release documents and whatnot as well, in terms of how that translates into licenses as well. But the other option is a virtualized option, and we're seeing more and more customers choose this option. When we're going in and architecting these ODA appliances and whatnot, customers like, wait a second, I just bought 20 cores. There's 20 cores in the box and I only licensed 2 cores for the database. Can I use the other 18 cores for something else? Absolutely. And that's why the virtualized model, we're seeing more and more adoption of that, because they're wanting to use that the virtual machines on that same ODA to consolidate other workloads. So rather than just disabling the necessary server cores and letting them sit idle, they're actually using it for other workloads. So customers are doing that, to get higher server utilization density, etc., especially for Oracle workloads, whether it be just the database, not just the database, but also like Oracle E-Business Suite and whatnot that we were talking about earlier. So the virtualized model is based on the Oracle VM technology. So if you have Oracle VM infrastructure deployed for other things and whatnot, an ODA might be a great adoption for your enterprise from that perspective. You can run applications in their own VMs in guest domains. You use CPU pools to separate the CPUs from the ODA base. Your ODA base is where all your database software would go, and the guest domains or user domains is where you create the virtual machines for all the other applications, if you will. And then the CPU pools are used to contain the licenses for those. So if you have WebLogic Server or IAS-EE and things like that, you can contain those licenses and consolidate both your database and applications infrastructure onto on a single platform. So the database and application CPU pools are separated, and here's some commands for that. And then, there's different supported operating systems. A lot of times customers are like, hey, I don't want everything to be on Linux. I have Solaris, I have Windows, etc. Yeah, you can use this platform to consolidate those operating systems and whatnot as well. So now that we've spoken about the key decision between bare metal and virtualized platform, let's talk about the database licenses specifically for a moment. So depending on the versions of the databases that you're running, there's different platforms. ODA platforms might be better suited for that version, along with the amount of licenses that you need. So let's talk about it from each database version. So let's start off with Standard Edition and Standard Edition 1. Okay, we know that they're not available for purchase anymore, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But if you're running 11.204 databases and you want to look at this ODA platform from a Standard Edition perspective to consolidate, an X2 Small might be a great entry point into adopting the ODA appliance versus buying and replacing other commodity vendor hardware, right? Again, this is greatly suited for customers that don't necessarily have a network engineer, an OS engineer, a storage engineer, etc. All the folks that you need to manage and administer these boxes. This is a great solution. Comes in all as a kit. It's really easy to manage and administer. It sets up and even allows you to manage your licenses a lot easier. So if you're on 11.204, X6 2 Small, and then your license options are essentially, you can do a database Standard Edition, Standard Edition 1, or Standard Edition 2. You can also run 11.204 SE and SE1s on the ODA X6-2 mediums and larges as well. Although the license requirements for Standard Edition, you're going to increase that based on the number of sockets and whatnot that you get on those platforms. That's why the license options and the counts are higher on that. Now, Standard Edition 2, which was released earlier this year, is really for 12.102 databases. So if you're on older Standard Edition versions and 11.204 mainly, and you want to upgrade to 12C on the Standard Edition, you can do that on the ODAs as well. and similar license requirements to the previous one. But we'll talk about the differences between the older versions and the new standard edition versions in a later slide. Last but not least, you have Enterprise Edition. Enterprise Edition, whether it's 11.204 or 12.102, it can be deployed on all the ODA platforms. The licensing for that is the number of cores enabled times the core factor, plus any database options. So you have to license the Oracle Database Enterprise Edition, and then the respective options and whatnot based on the number of cores that you enable. And then obviously you can also enable RAC on these platforms. A lot of customers that have Oracle RAC, they're definitely taking advantage of the X6-2 HA platform, one of the higher end ODAs, but they get all the capabilities to manage and administer RAC out of the box to help support that. Again, on the licensing side, it's just the number of cores that are enabled on the box, plus any of the database options that are enabled on there.
So earlier you were talking about capacity on demand.
Mm-hmm.
Is that standard or enterprise or both, or is there a dependency there?
Yeah, so capacity on demand is mainly for Enterprise Edition, and the reason is because Standard Edition is based on the sockets in the box, right? So capacity on demand licensing doesn't necessarily apply to Standard Edition Oracle database software, because I can't disable sockets on an ODA platform, right? Or any platform. It's not restricted to just ODA, but any platform. So it's the socket-based versus a processor-based licensing model is what drives that. So a lot of times customers are asking us about Standard Edition support on the newer versions. It is supported on the appliance as of 12.128 software updates. So if you guys are running older versions of the ODA software and whatnot, if you update it, then you can definitely take advantage of Standard Edition on the ODA boxes now as well, which is great. And I think that came out in October of 2016. So before I get into additional capabilities and advantages of running ODA to contain licenses, let's talk about a couple of key contractual clauses that are in everybody's contracts and they're often misunderstood. So let's talk about the data recovery using a clustered environment, right? So the failover rule or the failover clause in our Oracle contracts. So what does this clause say? It says I can run licensed programs on an unlicensed failover environment. I can do that up to 10 days in a calendar year. And it requires the primary and failover nodes to be clustered, sharing the same disk array. One failover node per clustered environment is of no charge. And then maintenance downtime counts towards the 10-day limitation. And then if licensing a failover environment, the same license metric must be used. So we'll talk about it more in detail on a few additional slides. The other clause that customers need to pay attention to in their contracts is the testing clause or the testing rule. So what does this clause or rule say, right? It says I can run licensed programs in an unlicensed computer for the purposes of testing physical copies of backups for my database, right? So again, that's physical copies of the backup of the database. And then I can test that physical backup. I can do 4 tests in a calendar year and up to 2 days per test in a calendar year. So this does not cover any other data recovery methods such as remote mirroring, where the Oracle program binary files are copied or synchronized, a lot of times SAN storage, mirroring, etc. None of those things apply. This is strictly for testing physical copies of our backups, and the restrictions are noted. So let's talk about data recovery using DataGuard on an ODA, right? Why is the ODA a great platform to enable data recovery, right? So we can leverage an ODA, and we'll talk about the H6-2 HA capabilities in a moment as well. But the key thing is you can lower the cost model for data recovery on an ODA with DataGuard in a remote data center with minimal licensing. You can use the pay-as-you-grow model, licensing model, right? So production might have 10 cores enabled. On the flip side, where my disaster recovery environment is, I might only enable 2 cores. Easy to manage, easy to maintain, right? I can match the performance of the production platform exactly to the ODA platform that I have, right? So I can match production and DR equivalently, right? I can use the DR environments like we talked about. If I do virtualization, I can potentially use that DR data recovery environment for non-production workloads. So I can leverage the capacity on the other box, for other workloads as well. So those are some of the key features of that ODA buys us without having to license the entire box or more software licensing than I'd need. So it allows for easy testing of failover and switchover, and I can test and validate patches potentially using my secondary server, the DR server, before I make changes to my production ODA. So here's a quick summary of the different types of recovery environments leveraging an ODA. So let's talk about the recovery environments and the times and whatnot. So as we talked about, we have the backups. Every system, every database and whatnot that we have, we should probably back it up, right? So data files and not the binaries are stored on a secondary storage array, right? Recovery is on failure, I have to restore the data files from a backup. So from a licensing perspective, I only need to license the primary database, and the storage devices do not require any database licensing, but the testing rule applies, right? So with an ODA, I get all the benefits of a backup, but here's another benefit. If I have an ODA, I can actually run backup straight to Oracle's cloud backup infrastructure with minimal effort. So not only can I have the backup stored locally on the additional drives that I may have on the ODA, but I can also configure a remote offsite backup leveraging an ODA. Let's talk about the failover, right? So a lot of times customers want to have a primary and a secondary server, failover, etc. So in this scenario, for this recovery configuration, the database server is in a cluster with failover nodes sharing the same storage array. So on failover, the primary of the primary node, a failover node becomes the primary, right? So only the primary database server needs to be licensed, and the failover rule or failover clause applies. So Next6-2HA is a great platform for that. Why? Because it's two essential servers slapped together to get us the capacity on that, and I can essentially have one active and one passive. They're all sharing the same storage array. Another way you can do that is using the lower models, the X6-2 smallest, mediums, or largest, to achieve the same thing. And both configuration design models are represented here. Now, if I need a little bit more robust recovery method for my environments, I have to move up into DataGuard. So with DataGuard, the data files are maintained on a separate server using log files, right? It's physical standby, and we want to ship the logs and apply them onto the secondary. So on this one, upon failure of the primary, the standby is activated and acts as a primary. So in this model, both servers need to be, the primary and the remote database servers need to be licensed using the same license metric. If it's named user plus in one, it has to be named user plus in the other. If it's processor in one, it has to be processor in the other. Now, you can do this with any of the classes of the ODAs that we have, and we can configure DataGuard, and we spoke about the DataGuard benefits using an ODA earlier in terms of how to best take advantage of DataGuard on an ODA platform. The last data recovery solution option is storage mirroring, right? So the database storage is mirrored to a remote site, right? So upon failure of the primary node, the remote site runs the Oracle software, right? So requires that both the primary and the remote database servers be licensed at the same metric. So again, you can do this same configuration with any of the ODA appliances, and then we can determine how best to replicate the storage using storage mirroring and whatnot with the ODAs. So let's talk about the database standard edition changes we alluded to earlier. So effective in September 1st, 2015, a new Oracle Database Standard Edition 2, was released by Oracle, right? And this is available now. We can't buy Standard Edition 1 and Standard Edition or Standard Edition 1 anymore. It's not available in the price list. We can't purchase it anymore. We have to purchase SE2. So there are new changes with SE2. So Oracle Database Standard Edition 2 can only be licensed on servers with a maximum capacity of 2 sockets. So, if you're going to try and build your own kit, you got to be mindful of that. Whereas if you just buy the ODA, that stuff's like Oracle's already thought of those design restrictions from a licensing perspective for us, so that if I buy the small, medium, or large standard edition, licensing and whatnot's already been factored into that design platform. If we don't buy an ODA and we're going to build our own kit, we just need to be mindful of those types of things. So, and then when Standard Edition 2 is used with Oracle RAC, including the option for Standard Edition 2, you may only be licensed on a maximum of 2 1-socket servers. So again, now I can leverage the X6-2 smalls to achieve this requirement from Oracle as it relates to SE2. So can customers stay on Standard Edition and Standard Edition 1? Absolutely. You can continue to run it as long as you want, but you won't be able to update your database to 12.102, right? So if I'm going to continue to run Standard Edition 1 because of the benefits that I'm achieving from a usage of that, the thing is I'm basically going to have to keep my databases at essentially 11.204. I won't be able to upgrade it to any of the 12C versions without having to 12.102 versions without having to uplift my license to Standard Edition 2. So with Standard Edition 1 and Standard Edition, I can run 11.204 or 12.101. 12.101 will become my terminal release if I'm on Standard Edition or Standard Edition 1 licensing. If I want to go anything above and beyond that, I have to license or migrate my licenses to Standard Edition 2. And that's it for this webinar. If you'll have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us, whether it's related to ODAs or ODA licensing, database licensing, architecture, and design and configuration. Sam?
Hello everyone, this is Samantha Weezer, our marketing manager. Feel free to contact us. Our email is info@smartdogservices.com. We do have PDFs available for download at our software licensing page on our website. And this video will be cut into 2 chapters and they will be available tomorrow morning. I will notify all attendees via email when it is up for share. Thank you for joining us.